The bus stops on the outskirts of a vast city. Aisha steps out onto the wet asphalt and looks up at the sky. It's gray, heavy, low. It's just rained, and the air smells of moisture, gasoline, and something else foreign, unfamiliar. She carries a single small bag. In her jacket pocket is enough money to last her a few days, if she saves. Her mind is both empty and deep. Her mind. She's 25, tall and thin, with dark chocolate-colored skin and heavy, wavy red hair that falls to her waist. Here, in this gray city, she's like a flame amidst ashes. Aisha doesn't know a single street, not a single name. She simply got off the bus because the ticket was cheap and she was going somewhere no one knew her. A new life doesn't ask permission. It simply begins. She finds a hostel 2 blocks away. A small room for 4, a bunk by the window, a shower at the end of the hall. Aisha drops off her bag, washes her face with cold water, and goes outside to look for work. The city greets her with noise and bustle. People rush past. No one looks at each other. The store windows are ablaze with lights, but Aisha walks on. She's not looking for a purchase, but for an opportunity. By evening, her legs are aching, and she hasn't found a single piece of paper with an address in her pocket. It's all wrong. Cafes require experience, stores require local registration, and construction sites only hire men. Aisha sits down on a bench in a small park and looks at the darkening sky. We need to think differently. Don't look for where the money is paid, but look for where it's needed. The next morning, she walks into an internet cafe. It's a cramped space with rows of old computers, the smell of sweat, and cheap coffee. Aisha sits in the far corner, opens a job posting website, and starts browsing. Waitress, salesperson, office cleaner, kitchen assistant. It's all the same. Experience, recommendations, locals. She scrolls further. She's about to close the page when her eye catches a line in bold. Housekeeper needed. High pay. Brave needed. Aisha freezes. They need someone brave. Why brave? What is it about this job that requires courage? She clicks on the ad. The text is short. Work in a private home. Live in. Full-time. Pay 3 times the average. Details upon meeting. Visit the recruitment agency at the following address. Street. Aisha copies the address into her notebook. 3 times higher than average. This means she'll be able to rent a decent place in a couple of months. Or send money home. Or just breathe easy, without counting every coin. She leaves the internet cafe and goes straight to the address. Time is of the essence. Ads like these sell out quickly. The recruitment agency is located in an old building downtown. The facade is peeling, the steps are worn, and the door creaks. Aisha climbs to the 2nd floor, walks down a long hallway, and opens a door with a sign reading Home and Office. Staffing. Inside is a small room. It smells of paper, dust, and old coffee. A plump woman wearing glasses sits at the desk. She's staring at the monitor and typing with one finger. But Aisha isn't looking at her. Next to the table, in a chair against the wall, sits a man. He's young, about 29, thin with fine features, and pale skin. His straight black hair reaches his chin and frames his face in a smooth line. He's wearing expensive loungewear, soft trousers, and a loose shirt made of fabric that looks like it's been ironed for an hour. But his eyes are tired, dark, deep, with bruises under them, as if he hasn't slept in a long time. He doesn't even turn his head when Aisha enters. He just sits and stares at a spot on the wall. Are you Aisha? The woman in glasses adjusts her glasses. About the ad? Yes. Have a seat. Aisha sits down on the chair next to the man. Now she sees him closer. He smells of expensive perfume, but underneath it, there's a weariness. Genuine, deep. The woman opens a folder and starts answering the standard questions. Experience, education, previous jobs. Aisha answers briefly and clearly. She worked for 3 families, cleaning, cooking, and caring for children. She always quit when she had to move. The woman nods, makes notes, then looks up and says, "This is a very unusual job opening. It's a private home. The duties are standard: cleaning, cooking, laundry, and housekeeping. Accommodation is on site, with a private room and meals provided by the landlord. Pay, she names the amount. Aisha winces inwardly. This is a huge amount of money. People don't pay that kind of money for nothing. But there is one condition. The woman falls silent and looks at the man. The man nods, barely, with his eyes alone. The owner of the house keeps a pet, the woman says slowly. A large python, 4 meters long. He doesn't live in a terrarium. He roams freely through the house. Everywhere, in any room, at any time. The woman falls silent and waits. Aisha is silent. For 6 months, we haven't found a single candidate, the woman continues. The girls refuse as soon as they hear about the snake. One of them became ill right here in the office. Another fainted when she saw the photo. Do you understand? It's a very large snake. It could scare anyone. Aisha looks at the man. He looks at her. There's no hope in his eyes. Only weariness and the expectation of another rejection. I'm not afraid of snakes, Aisha says. Silence. The man raises an eyebrow. For the first time, something changes on his face. Do you understand who we're talking about? He asks. His voice is quiet even, but there's a hint of steel in it. This isn't a little snake in a terrarium. This is an animal 4 meters long, as thick as my arm. It could scare anyone. I understand. Aisha nods. I'm not afraid. Why? Aisha shrugs. A simple movement, without pathos. I had a boa constrictor when I was a kid. It wasn't that big, of course, but I got used to them. Snakes aren't aggressive unless you touch them. They just go about their business. The man looks at her for a long time. He studies her face, her eyes, her red hair, her calm hands. Then he nods. Okay, let's go. You can have a look at the place. The man's car is large and black. The interior smells of leather, cleanliness, and something else. Something expensive and elusive. Aisha climbs into the back seat. The man gets behind the wheel. They drive out of the city center in silence. The city outside the window changes. Tall buildings are left behind. Quiet streets lined with trees begin, then private housing, then a completely green area where houses are hidden behind high fences. The car stops in front of wrought iron gates. The man presses a button on the panel, and the gate slowly opens. They drive inside. Aisha sees the house and freezes. It's huge, all glass and concrete, straight lines, sharp angles, transparent walls. Through them, you can see the interior. A living room with white furniture, a staircase to the second floor, empty hallways. There's a lot of greenery around, tall trees, bushes, a perfect lawn. But it's quiet, very quiet. No birds, no dogs, no people. It's as quiet as a museum. The man gets out of the car. Aisha follows him out. They walk along the light-colored stone path to the front door. And then Aisha notices movement. Something moves outside the large panoramic window to the left. Slowly, smoothly, very long. It glides along the glass, and even from here you can see how massive it is. First one part of the body, then a second, then a third. The snake flows through the room like a living river. Aisha stops for a second, just looks. Then she moves on. The man opens the door with a key. The glass door slides silently aside. He lets Aisha go first. The inside of the house is the same as the outside. Lots of light, plenty of air, a minimum of clutter. White walls, light wooden floors, large gray sofas. There are no pictures on the walls, no knickknacks on the shelves, just cleanliness and order. The man closes the door and suddenly freezes. Aisha hears a sound, a soft rustle, the sliding of a heavy body across the smooth floor. The rustling sounds get closer. Aisha turns towards the sound. A head appears from the corridor, leading deeper into the house. Large, triangular, with dark, beady eyes. The eyes look straight at Aisha. There is no anger in them, no fear, nothing, only an ancient calm. The head is followed by a neck, thick and muscular. Then comes the body. It crawls out of the hallway and takes up half the entryway. It's all patterned. Dark and light stripes intertwine, creating a dazzling design. The python continues to move. It stretches out. and Aisha sees that it is truly enormous. 4 meters isn't just a figure on paper. It's a living creature, taking up almost the entire space at the entrance. The man stands motionless. He looks at Aisha, waits. The python crawls closer. Its head rises higher, to waist level, then chest level, then face level. Its tongue flickers in the air, sniffing out the scent. Its black eyes stare straight into Aisha's. Usually at this point, girls scream, or back away from the door, or faint. The man had seen this many times over the past 6 months. Aisha looks at the snake and slowly sinks to her knees, right on the floor, in front of the enormous python. She holds out her hand, palm up. She doesn't reach, doesn't grab, doesn't make any sudden movements. She simply offers. The python freezes. His head slowly leans toward her hand, touches it with his nose. Once, twice. His tongue touches her skin. Then his head rises higher and touches her red hair. Aisha doesn't move. She sits on her knees and allows the snake to explore her. The python's head moves through her hair, slowly, carefully. He inhales the scent, runs it through the red strands as if memorizing them. Then he moves lower, to her shoulder, to her back. His body begins to wrap around her. First, one ring rests on her waist, lightly, almost weightlessly. Then the second, lower. Then the third. The python wraps around Aisha, but doesn't squeeze. It simply lies in its coils, like a huge living scarf, like a blanket, like protection. Aisha feels his weight, his warmth, his slow breathing. The snake breathes rarely, but powerfully, and this breath is transmitted to her through her skin. She raises her hand and strokes his head, running her fingers over his smooth scales. The python closes his eyes in pleasure. A quiet sound comes from the hallway. Aisha raises her head. There's a man standing there. He's leaning his shoulder against the wall and looking at them. There's disbelief in his eyes. Pure, unadulterated disbelief. Minho can't move. He stands in the hallway, watching the scene unfold in the entryway. His python, his giant, whom he raised from a tiny cub, who never let anyone near him, who hissed at all his acquaintances and friends, who made people faint. This python coils around a strange girl, swooning at her touch. Minho rubs his face with his palm. Maybe he's sleeping? Maybe he's dreaming from lack of sleep? No, not a dream. A red-haired girl sits on the floor and talks to the giant, quietly, in a whisper. The words are inaudible, but the intonation is calm and gentle. The giant listens. He turns his head toward her when she speaks and freezes. Minho watches the python press even closer to her. His body relax. His heavy head rests on her lap. During his 6-month search, Minho witnessed many reactions: fear, hysteria, fainting, tears, even aggression. One girl tried to hit the giant with her bag. Luckily, she missed, but he had never seen anything like this. The girl looks up and looks at him. She smiles. "He's good," she says simply. "Very good, just lonely." Minho is silent. He doesn't know what to say. In the evening, Minho shows Aisha her room. It's on the 2nd floor, at the end of the hallway. It's large and bright, with a window that takes up half the wall. Inside, there's a bed, a closet, a desk, and a private bathroom. Everything is new, clean, and smells fresh. Minho says, "I'll tell you about your duties tomorrow. Rest today." He leaves. Aisha is left alone. She opens her bag and takes out the bare minimum: a change of clothes, a comb, a notebook. She hangs her jacket in the closet. She sits on the bed and looks out the window. The garden darkens beyond the glass. Lanterns along the paths come on. It's so quiet you can hear your heartbeat. Aisha lies down on the bed and closes her eyes. The day has been long, very long. She is already falling asleep when she hears a sound outside the door. A heavy, slithering sound. Slow, rhythmic. Something large is crawling down the corridor. Aisha opens her eyes and looks at the door. Movement is visible below, through the crack. A dark body crawls past, stopping right at the threshold. She hears the python sigh. The huge animal settles down at her door, coils itself, and becomes silent. Aisha smiles in the dark. "Sleep, giant," she whispers. "Guard," and falls asleep. In the morning, Aisha wakes up from the warmth. She doesn't immediately realize where she is. Then she remembers. A new house, a new room, a new job. She turns her head and freezes. The giant lies around her bed, a huge circle that takes up almost the entire room. His head rests on the floor next to her bed, directly in front of her face. He looks at her, his beady black eyes blinking slowly, calmly. Aisha reaches out and touches his head. "Good morning," she says. The python closes its eyes in pleasure, its tongue flickering in the air in greeting. Aisha sits up in bed. The giant doesn't move. He just lies there, warming the floor with his large body. The room is warm, as if the heating had been turned up full blast. Aisha gets up, steps over him, and goes into the bathroom to wash up. When she emerges, the python is already slithering after her. It follows her down the hallway, down the stairs, and into the kitchen. Minho is standing in the kitchen. He's wearing the same clothes, holding a cup of coffee. He sees Aisha, sees the python behind her, and freezes with the cup to his mouth. The giant passes his master without even glancing at him. He crawls straight to the stove, where Aisha is already opening the refrigerator. "He lay outside your door all night?" Minho asks quietly. Aisha replies, "Towards morning, he came inside and lay down around the bed." Minho is silent. He looks at the python, which is now wrapped around Aisha's legs as she retrieves the eggs and oil. "I never—" Minho begins and falls silent. "What?" Aisha turns to him. "He never let anyone into his zone, not even me. I can feed him, I can pet him, but he always keeps his distance. And with you, he's different with me." Aisha nods. "I can feel it." She cracks eggs into the frying pan. The python lies calmly at her feet, coiled, dozing. Aisha prepares breakfast quickly and skillfully. Scrambled eggs with tomatoes, buttered toast, fresh coffee. She sets the table on the small table in the corner of the kitchen. Minho sits down opposite her. The giant is still lying at Aisha's feet, his head resting on her slippers. "Are you always this calm?" Minho asks, cutting into an egg. "Not always," Aisha smiles. "But I'm calm with snakes. They're honest. There's no deception in them. If they're feeling bad, they crawl away. If they're feeling good, they stay. It's that simple. Are people more complicated? People are more complex," Aisha agrees. They eat in silence. The giant occasionally raises his head, glances at Aisha's plate, then lowers it again. "Is he hungry?" Aisha asks. "No, I fed him 3 days ago. He'll have enough for a week." Aisha nods. She finishes eating, gets up, and washes the dishes. The python rises with her, moving closer to the sink so as not to lose contact. Minho looks at them from behind the table, thin, black-haired, with a perpetual weariness in his eyes. Now there's something new in his gaze. Not weariness, interest. "You're not asking who I am," he says suddenly. "What I do. Why I live alone with a python in a house like this." Aisha wipes her hands with a towel and turns to face him. "I'll ask when you're ready to tell me," she replies. "My job is to clean and cook, not to ask questions. But you're interested, aren't you?" "Interesting," Aisha nods. "But I know how to wait." She leans down and strokes the giant's head. The python purrs contentedly, if snakes can purr at all. Minho looks at this picture, and for the first time in a long time, feels like the house is no longer empty. Aisha adjusts to the house quickly. She has a strict schedule: breakfast in the morning, then cleaning, then lunch, then cleaning again, then dinner. The giant follows her everywhere. He lies at her feet when she mops the floors. He wraps himself around her waist when she stands at the stove. He sleeps in the doorway of her room every night. Minho watches this silently. He works hard in his office on the ground floor, receives some men in black, and speaks quietly on the phone. Aisha doesn't interfere in his affairs. Hers is cleanliness and food. On the 5th day, she notices a door. It's located at the very end of the hallway on the first floor, behind the kitchen. It's small, wooden, and painted the same color as the walls. If you don't look closely, you might pass by and not notice. Aisha passes by several times while washing the hallway floor, and each time, she feels a strange chill wafting from under the door. At first, she thinks she's imagining things. The heating in the house is working perfectly, it's warm everywhere. But here, by this door, the air is noticeably colder. Aisha stops, squats down, and runs her hand along the crack between the door and the floor. Cold air wafts in from below, as if from a cellar, and also sound. A quiet, barely audible rustling. Not mice, not rats. Something else. Soft, gliding. The giant lying nearby suddenly lifts his head. He looks at the door and freezes. His tongue flickers through the air rapidly. He clearly feels the same as Aisha. Aisha reaches for the handle. The door is locked. "You can't go there." Minho's voice comes from behind her so suddenly that Aisha jumps. She turns. Minho is standing 2 steps away. He's looking not at her, but at the door. His face is pale, tense. Aisha says, standing up, "I was just cleaning. I noticed it was cold." "It's an old basement," Minho says. His voice is even, but there's a hint of metal in it. "Utilities, pipes, it's dirty and damp. You have no business there." "I understand." Aisha nods. She takes the bucket and goes back to washing the floor, but out of the corner of her eye, she notices Minho standing by the door for another minute, just standing there, looking at her. And then he goes into the office. The giant doesn't follow Aisha. He remains lying by the basement door. He looks at her and hisses quietly. In the evening, they dine together. It's already becoming a tradition. Minho sits at the table across from Aisha, while the giant dozes by the fireplace in the living room, but his head is turned so he can see Aisha. Aisha made a stew with vegetables. Minho eats silently, but today he looks different. More relaxed, perhaps. His eyes look a little less tired than usual. "Delicious," he says briefly. "Thank you." Aisha also eats silently, but inside she has a question, the one about the door, and not only that. She puts her fork down and looks at Minho. "Can I ask you something?" Minho looks up, nods. "Where did you get the giant?" Aisha asks. "I mean, where did you get it? Snakes like that don't live in our area." Minho freezes. His face changes right before my eyes. Just now it was calm, even warm. And suddenly it becomes stony, impenetrable. His eyes darken, his lips press into a thin line. He is silent. 1 second, 2, 3. A whole minute passes in complete silence. Aisha hears only the crackling of the wood in the fireplace and her own breathing. Minho slowly gets up from the table, carefully places the napkin next to his plate. He turns and walks into the office without even glancing at Aisha. The office door closes quietly but distinctly. Aisha sits alone at the table. The giant raises his head, looks at her, then at the door through which his master has disappeared. He makes a quiet hissing sound. "I get it," Aisha whispers. "It's a sore subject." She clears the table, washes the dishes, and goes to her room. The giant crawls after her, as always. But today, he lies down, not at the threshold, but right on the bed, next to Aisha. She strokes his head. "Do you miss her too?" she whispers. "The one who was before me?" The giant is silent, but he presses his head against her hand. In the morning, Aisha goes down to the first floor and immediately notices something strange. Yesterday, she washed the floor in the hallway. She washed it thoroughly, twice. The water was clean, the rag was new. She remembers how the tiles sparkled when she finished. There are stripes on the floor now, long, wide, wet. They stretch from the front door across the entire hallway and disappear around the corner into the corridor leading to the kitchen, as if something heavy and wet had been dragged across the floor. Aisha squats down and touches the floor with her finger. It's damp. So this happened recently, maybe overnight. She looks at the giant. The python lies at her feet, as usual. Its body is dry. its scales glistening, but not wet. "It's not you," Aisha says. The giant looks at her and looks away. It's the first time Aisha has seen a snake look away, as if it's ashamed or scared. Aisha follows the tracks. They lead to the kitchen, then to the hallway, then they end at the basement door. The same door, closed, locked as usual. But a small puddle had formed underneath her, and in this puddle, Aisha noticed something shiny. She bends down and picks it up with her fingers. A scale. Small, light, almost transparent, not like the giant's. The giant's scales are large, dark, and patterned. This one is completely different. Aisha hides the scale in her pocket. She doesn't know why. Her instinct just tells her it's important. She washes the floor again, washes away the traces. She doesn't say anything to Minho at breakfast, but she watches. Minho is as silent today as he was last night. He eats quickly, barely looking at Aisha. He goes into his office and doesn't come out until lunch. Aisha is cleaning the house, but now she's listening. To every rustle, every creak. The house that seems so quiet is now full of sounds. Somewhere, something is scratching. Somewhere a sigh. Somewhere water is flowing through pipes. Or not water. At night, Aisha wakes up from the cold. She lies under the blanket, but she is cold. So cold, as if the window were wide open, although she knows she closed it before going to bed. Aisha opens her eyes. The room is dark. The moon is hidden behind the clouds today, and there is no light at all, only blackness. But in the corner of the room, by the door, there are two lights. They glow pale yellow, like the headlights of a distant car. They look straight at Aisha. Aisha's heart skips a beat. She freezes, afraid to breathe. She knows those eyes, the way snakes' eyes glow in the dark when even a little light falls on them. But now there is no light at all, and those eyes cannot be the giant's eyes. The giant lies next to her on the bed. She feels his warmth, his heavy body. He is here, and the eyes are there, by the door. Aisha wants to scream, but her voice is gone. She wants to jump up and turn on the light, but her body won't obey. The giant suddenly lifts his head. He looks where Aisha is looking, and he hisses, loudly, threateningly, like nothing Aisha had ever heard before. The lights in the corner flicker and disappear. Aisha hears a rustling sound, sliding. Someone is crawling behind the door, which she definitely locked at night. The giant jumps off the bed and rushes to the door. He bangs his head on the wood, trying to open it, but the door is locked. He hisses, thrashes around the room, then returns to Aisha and lies down on her with his entire body, pinning her to the bed. Aisha is trembling. She strokes his head, trying to calm herself and calm him. "What was that?" she whispers. "Who was that?" The giant doesn't respond. He only presses closer. In the morning, Aisha gets up and checks the door first. It's closed, but on the floor, by the threshold, there's a new scale. Small, light. Aisha picks it up and puts it in her pocket with the first one. Minho leaves in the morning. He says briefly, "I'm busy, I'll be back in the evening." Aisha nods and continues cleaning. But today she can't concentrate. Her thoughts return to the night eyes, to the scales, to the marks on the floor, to the basement door. She finishes cleaning the first floor and goes up to the second. There are 3 rooms here, her bedroom, Minho's bedroom, and another door that's always closed. Aisha stops in front of the door. She's never gone inside. Minho didn't say so directly, but she knows she can't go in there. Minho is not here now. Aisha looks at the handle. It's an ordinary copper handle, gleaming in the sun. She reaches out and freezes. At this moment, the door opens by itself, slowly, creaking, inward, as if someone from the other side had pushed her. Aisha takes a step back. The giant who had been nearby suddenly rushes forward and runs into the room. Aisha hears his hiss, then silence. She overcomes her fear and follows. The room is empty, completely empty. No furniture, no belongings, no carpet, just bare walls and a dusty floor. The window is covered with thick fabric, so it's dimly lit. The giant sits in the middle of the room, staring at the wall. Aisha comes closer and sees a photograph on the wall. The only one, pinned to the wallpaper. Aisha takes it off and holds it up to the light from the corridor. The photograph shows a little boy. He's about 5 years old, with shoulder-length black hair and a thin face. He's sitting on the floor and smiling. Next to him is a woman, young, beautiful, with very long black hair that reaches her waist. She's hugging the boy and smiling too. And at their feet lies a small python. It's tiny, no more than a meter long. It's coiled up and looking at the camera. Aisha peers into the woman's face. Something about it seems familiar. Not the features themselves, but the gaze. Calm, deep, slightly distant. Minho has exactly the same look now. Aisha doesn't hear the footsteps. She doesn't hear anything at all until a voice behind her says, "Put it back." Aisha turns around abruptly. Minho stands in the doorway. He wasn't supposed to be back until this evening, and it's only noon now. He leans his hand on the doorframe and looks at her. His gaze is cold, alien, the same as when he first met me, only worse. "I said put it back," he repeats quietly. Aisha carefully hangs the photograph back on the nail. "I'm sorry," she says. "The door opened on its own. I didn't mean to." Minho interrupts. He enters the room and approaches her. The giant steps between them, but Minho doesn't even look at the python. "You came in here. I told you about the basement," Minho continues. "But I didn't tell you about this room, because I didn't think I'd have to. There's nothing interesting here. It's just an old room." "Who is this woman?" Aisha asks. Minho is silent for a long, long time. "My mother," he says finally. His voice is muffled, emotionless. "And the python? Is it the giant?" "Yes. He's the little one." Aisha looks at the photo, then at Minho. "Where is she now?" The question hangs in the air. Minho looks away. For the first time in a long time, he looks away. "She's not here," he says shortly. "Died? I don't know." Aisha waits for an explanation, but Minho turns and leaves the room. His footsteps echo loudly down the hallway, then fade away on the stairs. The giant looks at Aisha, then runs after his owner. Aisha is left alone in the empty room. She looks at the photograph again. The woman in it is smiling, hugging a little boy. Her eyes are kind. Aisha thinks, "Where did you go?" She steps out and closes the door. The handle clicks, locking itself. That evening, Minho himself comes into the kitchen. Aisha is preparing dinner, the giant lying at her feet. Minho sits at the table and remains silent for a long time. Then he says, "Sit down. It will cool down." Aisha turns off the stove and sits down opposite. She doesn't rush. She just waits. Minho looks at the fire in the fireplace, which is visible from the kitchen. "Her name was Hana," he begins. "My mother. She loved snakes, always had, since childhood. She said there was something ancient about them, something real." Aisha remains silent, afraid of scaring him off. "She brought the giant home when he was this big," Minho says, holding up his hands and showing about 30 centimeters. Small, thin, like a branch. "I was scared at first, but she said, 'Don't be afraid, he's your friend.' And he really is. I grew up with him," Aisha asks quietly. Minho's voice breaks. He pauses, swallowing the lump in his throat. 10 years ago, she went into the basement and never came back. Aisha feels a chill run down her spine. "To the basement?" she asks again. "That very one?" "Yes. She went there often. She said it was cool there, good for snakes. She had other snakes, not just the giant. Several. Small ones. She bred them." Minho falls silent. He stares at one point. "That day, she went down to the basement, as usual. I was expecting her for dinner. She didn't come. I went down. There was no one there. Neither her nor the snakes. Empty. Only the giant sat by the door and whined. If snakes can whine at all." "What do you mean, empty?" Aisha doesn't understand. "Did she just disappear?" "Yes." The police searched. Nothing. No traces, no explanation. The basement is small. There's nowhere to even hide. But she was gone. And there were no snakes. They were all gone. Aisha remembers the night eyes, the scales on the floor, the rustling behind the wall. "Are you sure there aren't any?" she asks cautiously. "Snakes?" Minho looks up at her. "What do you want to say?" "Nothing," Aisha quickly answers. "It's just, the house is big. You never know." Minho looks at her for a long time, a very long time. "Did you see something?" he asks harshly. "No," Aisha lies. "Nothing." She doesn't know why she's lying. Her instincts just tell her it's too early to tell. Aisha can't sleep at night. She lies in bed and stares at the ceiling. The giant is nearby, as always. His warmth is comforting, but her thoughts are haunting her. Disappearance. 10 years ago. Empty basement. Snakes that disappeared. And the traces that are appearing now. Scales. Eyes. Aisha listens to the silence. And he hears. There's something moving behind the wall of her bedroom. A quiet rustle. A soft glide. As if a large body were rubbing against the wall on the other side. But on that side, there was only a corridor. An empty corridor, and Minho's room beyond. No other rooms. Aisha sits up in bed. The giant also raises his head. He hears the same thing. The rustling continues. Slow, rhythmic. Someone is crawling along the wall. Aisha gets up, goes to the wall, and presses her ear to it. The sound gets louder. Scratching? No, sliding. She raps her knuckles on the wall. The sound fades for a second, then starts again. There's someone there, in the wall. Aisha takes a step back. The giant crawls toward her, placing himself between her and the wall. He hisses, but quietly, as if afraid to attract attention. Aisha whispers. The giant is silent. He only looks at the wall and trembles. The snake trembles. Aisha has never seen a snake tremble. She doesn't go to bed until morning. She sits on the bed, hugging the giant, and listens to the rustling behind the wall. It only subsides in the early morning. From that day on, the giant becomes different. Before, he simply followed Aisha, lay next to her, keeping her warm. Now he doesn't leave her side for a second. Literally. When Aisha washes the dishes, the python coils around her legs so tightly that she can barely move. When she sits down to rest, it climbs onto her lap and rests its head on her chest. When she lies down to sleep, it lies directly on top of her, pinning her to the bed with all its weight. He doesn't sleep. Aisha notices. At night, the giant doesn't close his eyes. He stares into the darkness, into different corners, at the door. His head constantly turns, tracking movement. He hisses at empty corners. Once, Aisha sees him hissing at the wall behind which there had been a rustling sound the night before. He hisses long, angrily, threateningly. "What's there, boy?" Aisha asks. "Who's there?" The giant doesn't answer. But there's fear in his eyes. Real fear. On the third night of this behavior, Aisha wakes up unable to breathe. The giant is lying on top of her, his head pressed against her face. He covers her completely, like a shield. Aisha tries to move, but the python doesn't let her. He presses her tighter to the bed. And then she hears. There is someone in the room. A rustling sound near the wall, then near the closet, then very close, near the bed. The giant hisses, opening his mouth. Aisha sees him like this for the first time, ready to attack. Something slides across the floor next to the bed. Aisha can't see what it is, but she hears a sound and smells a scent. Strange, musky, heavy. The giant rushes forward. Aisha hears the sounds of struggle, hissing, the impact of bodies, then silence. She jumps up and turns on the light. The room is empty. The giant sits in the middle, breathing heavily. Saliva drips from his mouth. He looks at the door, and on the floor, Aisha sees a new scale. Only now it's bigger and darker. In the morning, Aisha notices that her red hair clip is missing. It lay on the bedside table, where Aisha left small things before bed. A simple plastic hair clip, the kind she used to pin her hair while cooking. Aisha searches the entire room. The hairpin is gone. The giant lies by the door and looks at her. There's guilt in his gaze, as if he knows what happened but can't say it. Aisha drops to the floor and examines every inch. Empty under the bed, empty under the closet, empty under the dresser. She finds a scale, not like before. This one is larger, darker, with a pattern similar to the giant's, but not the giant's. The giant's pattern is different, and Aisha has already studied it thoroughly. This scale is from a different snake, from a larger snake. Aisha picks it up and holds it up to the light. The scales are shiny and iridescent. They're warm, as if they were just pulled from a living body. Aisha whispers, "You came last night. You took my hairpin. Why?" There's no answer. Only the giant crawls closer and nuzzles her hand, as if asking, "Be careful." Aisha puts the scale in her pocket, along with the others. There are 5 of them now. 5 proofs that there's someone in the house. Someone Minho can't see, or doesn't want to see. She looks at the wall behind the bed, the very one from which the rustling came last night. "I will find out who you are," she says quietly. "I will find out." The giant presses himself against her legs, as if in agreement. Aisha wakes up in the middle of the night, thirsty. Her throat is dry, and there's a bad taste in her mouth. She carefully pushes the giant away from her, who, as usual, lies across the bed and gets up. The room is dark. The moon is hidden behind clouds. Aisha gropes her way to the door and steps out into the hallway. The giant doesn't move. For the first time in many nights, he remains in place, not even raising his head. Aisha goes down to the first floor. The house is quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator. She goes into the kitchen, pours water from the filter, and drinks it in large gulps. Then he decides to go into the bathroom, which is next to the kitchen. She turns on the light. The bathroom is small, all tiled in white. There's a sink, a toilet, and a shower stall. There's a rug on the floor and shampoo bottles on the shelf. Aisha goes to the sink to wash her face. She looks up at the mirror and freezes. In the mirror behind her, there is a snake hanging on the ceiling. Large and long, she curled around the ceiling lamp and hung her head down. Her eyes glowed yellow, reflected in the mirror. She looked straight at Aisha. Aisha holds her breath. She stares into the mirror, afraid to turn around. The snake hangs motionless, only its tongue flickering in the air, tasting the scent. This isn't a giant. It's a different snake. Thinner, longer, with lighter skin. It has dark markings on its head that look like eyebrows. Aisha turns slowly, very slowly. There is no one on the ceiling. She looks in the mirror again. In the reflection, the snake is still hanging from the lamp, shaking its head. Aisha feels a cold sweat break out on her back. She takes a step back, toward the door, her eyes fixed on the mirror. The snake in the reflection watches her. Its head turns, following Aisha with its gaze. Aisha runs out into the hallway and upstairs, her heart pounding somewhere in her throat. She bursts into the bedroom and turns on the light. The giant raises his head and looks at her, a question in his eyes. Aisha exhales. There, in the bathroom, the giant is on his feet in an instant. He slides off the bed and runs to the door. Aisha follows him. They go down to the first floor and approach the bathroom. The giant stops at the threshold, takes a deep breath, and then slowly steps inside. Aisha stands behind, ready to run. The giant walks around the bathroom. He peers under the sink, into the shower stall, behind the toilet. Then he raises his head to the ceiling. The lamp hangs in place. A regular lamp, white shade, no snake. Aisha follows in. She looks at the ceiling, at the lamp. Empty. She turns to the mirror. The reflection shows only her and the giant. "I saw," she whispers. "I'm not crazy. I saw." The giant crawls toward the wall and stops at the ventilation grate. He sniffs the air around it and hisses softly. Aisha comes closer and sees a wet trail on the tiles. A thin line of slime leads from the sink straight to the grate. Aisha runs to Minho. She doesn't knock. She simply bursts into his bedroom and turns on the light. Minho jumps out of bed, his black hair disheveled, his eyes sleepily angry. Aisha screams, "In the bathroom! A snake!" Minho's expression instantly changes. He stands up, throws on his robe, and runs after Aisha. They go down to the first floor. Minho rushes into the bathroom, Aisha right behind him. The bathroom is empty. Minho looks around. He looks at the ceiling, under the sink, in the cabinet. Where? He asks sharply. It was here. Aisha approaches the mirror. On the ceiling, hanging from the lamp. I saw it in the mirror. Minho looks at the lamp. It's a regular lamp, nothing out of the ordinary. You dreamed it, he says. No! Aisha almost screams. I wasn't sleeping. I went out for a drink. Then I came in here, turned on the light, and there it was. It was hanging right here. Aisha points to the ceiling. And when I turned around, it was gone. But the mark remained. She points to the tile. Minho leans down and touches the streak of mucus with his finger. He brings it to his nose and sniffs it. A snake, he says quietly. It really is a snake. The giant crawls up to the ventilation grill and hisses again. Minho looks in. The grill is old, metal, screwed to the wall with 4 screws. Where did she come from? Aisha asks. Minho is silent. He approaches the bars and tugs at them. The bars don't budge. Bring a screwdriver, he says. Aisha runs into the kitchen, bringing back a toolbox. Minho picks up a screwdriver and starts unscrewing the screws. His hands are shaking, but he remains silent. The last screw falls out, and the grill is removed. A cold, damp air blew out of the hole. The darkness inside was so thick it felt alive. Minho shines his phone in the direction. The beam picks out the metal walls of the ventilation shaft. It goes deep, down, to the sides. A whole network of passages. You can't fit in there, Minho says. It's too narrow. The giant suddenly pokes his head into the hole and hisses loudly. A replying hiss comes from the depths, a quiet but distinct sound. Aisha and Minho look at each other. There's someone there, Aisha whispers. Minho stays awake all night. He sits in the kitchen, drinking coffee and staring at the open air vent. The giant lies at his feet, but constantly raises his head and peers into the dark opening. Aisha isn't sleeping either. She's sitting nearby, wrapped in a blanket. No one speaks. In the early morning, Minho gets up and goes to the storage room. He returns with a coil of sturdy rope and a small flashlight. I'll climb, he says. You said you couldn't get through there, Aisha reminds. You can't use the main ventilation, but if you remove the grate in another room, maybe the passage there is wider. They go to the 2nd floor. Minho checks every vent in the house, in Aisha's bedroom, in his bedroom, in the hallway, in the guest room. In the guest room, the empty one where Aisha found the photograph, the grate was unscrewed. Not broken, but carefully unscrewed and placed back. Minho takes it off and shines a light inside. The shaft is wider here. An adult can squeeze through if they bend over. I'm climbing, Minho says. I'm with you. No. You stay here. If I'm not back in an hour, call for help. Aisha wants to argue, but Minho is already tying the rope to his belt and giving her the other end. Hold on. If I tug 3 times, pull it out. He crawls into the darkness. Aisha kneels at the opening and watches as the light from his flashlight sinks deeper. At first, he's visible as he crawls. Then the light becomes a tiny dot, then vanishes. Silence. Only the heartbeats. 1 minute, 2, 5, 10. Aisha feels the rope tighten, then loosen, then tighten again. 1 jerk, 2nd, 3rd. Aisha pulls with all her might. The rope moves easily, then more heavily, and then Minho appears from the hole. He is pale, covered in dust, and has a strange expression in his eyes. There are passages there, he says, catching his breath. Lots of passages. They lead down to the basement. But I couldn't go any further. There was a blockage. What blockage? Pipes. Old, rusty. Someone blocked the passage on purpose. But I saw tracks. Snake tracks. Lots of them. Minho is silent for a long time after emerging from the vent. He sits on the floor in the empty room, staring into space and saying nothing. Aisha sits nearby, waiting. Finally, he says, I haven't told you everything about my mother. Aisha is listening. She didn't just love snakes, she bred them. Rare species, dear ones. She had her own little nursery in the basement. I thought she gave it up when I was born. But no. Minho runs his hand over his face. Before she disappeared, she bought a new batch, several babies. Very rare, very expensive. I found the papers after she disappeared, but I didn't find the snakes themselves. How many were there? Aisha asks. 5. 5 cubs. Different species. One of them, this one. He nods at the giant, who's lying by the door. The giant was the largest. The others were smaller, but they disappeared. What if they didn't disappear? Minho looks up at her. What do you mean? What if they were here all this time? In the house? In the walls? In the basement? Minho shakes his head. Impossible. 10 years. They would have grown up. They need to eat, drink, they need space. How could they hide? Aisha says honestly, but I saw a snake, and more than one. You heard the hissing coming from the ventilation too. Minho stands up, walks over to the wall, and punches it. I've been looking, he shouts. I've searched the whole house, every corner. I've been down to the basement 100 times. It's empty. And in the walls? Aisha asks quietly. Minho freezes. In the walls? This house is big. There's space between the walls, ventilation, old passages. If someone laid out roots there. Minho looks at her. There's fear in his eyes. Real fear, something Aisha has never seen before. If they're there, he whispers. If they've been there all this time, then she is too. He doesn't finish the sentence. But Aisha understands. Mother. If the snakes survived, if they hid in the walls all these years, then someone fed them. Someone cared for them. And this someone could only be one person. Aisha begins to notice strange things in the kitchen. She cooks according to a strict schedule. Breakfast in the morning, lunch in the afternoon, and dinner in the evening. She buys exactly the amount of food needed for these meals, plus a little extra. But the products began to disappear. At first, she thinks she's made a mistake. Who knows, maybe she miscalculated. But when an entire package of meat disappears, then a can of preserves, then vegetables, she realizes it wasn't a mistake. Someone takes food. Minho eats at the same table with her, and she sees every portion. The giant eats separately on frozen rodents kept in a special freezer in the pantry. That food is still there, and regular food disappears. Aisha checks the refrigerator every night before bed and every morning. There's always less food in the morning than there was in the evening. Someone comes at night and takes food. She tells Minho. He frowns but says nothing. He just asks her to lock the kitchen for the night. Aisha locks the door. In the morning, the door is locked, but there is less food again. She checks the windows, doors, and ventilation. Everything is closed, but the food is going away. The giant doesn't sleep every night now. He lies in the kitchen, by the refrigerator, staring into the darkness. Sometimes he hisses. Sometimes he simply follows with his eyes, a movement Aisha can't see. One morning, Aisha finds a small apple core on the kitchen floor. Someone had eaten an apple, but didn't finish it and threw it away. The core is fresh. That means it was eaten last night. Aisha picks it up and examines it. Teeth marks. Not human? She's not sure. Too small, too sharp. She puts the core in a bag and hides it in her pocket. The collection of evidence is growing. The next day, Aisha is washing the floor in the long hallway on the first floor. The giant is lying nearby, as usual, but today he's restless. He keeps raising his head, sniffing, and staring at the wall. Aisha notices that the wall in this place is strange. As she passes by, she feels warmth. She stops and presses her palm to the wall. The wall is warm. Not hot, but warm, as if someone on the other side is warming it with their body. Aisha presses her ear. At first, nothing. Then she hears, breathing, the quiet, rhythmic sound of inhalation and exhalation. Someone is breathing behind the wall, slowly, deeply, like someone sleeping, or like a big snake after eating. Aisha takes a step back. The giant crawls to the wall and rests his head where she had just been listening. He freezes and closes his eyes. He listens to the same thing. There's someone there, Aisha whispers. There really is someone there. She begins to examine the wall more closely. It's an ordinary wall, covered with light-colored wallpaper. But if you look closely, a thin stripe is visible along the edges. As if it weren't a wall, but Aisha runs her finger along the edge. The wallpaper peels away slightly. She pulls harder, and a piece of the wallpaper comes off. Under the wallpaper is wood, a door. Small, narrow, without a handle. Aisha stands in front of the door and doesn't know what to do. It's hidden behind the wallpaper. It's been deliberately taped over so no one can find it. But someone has clearly used it recently. The edge of the wallpaper is peeling back, and you can see the door has been opened. Aisha pushes it. The door doesn't budge. She searches for a way to open it. She runs her hands along the edges, presses on the wood. Nothing. The giant suddenly rises onto his hindquarters and slams his head into the center of the door. Once, twice, 3 times. Something clicks. The door opens a centimeter. Aisha pushes harder. The door opens inward, and air rushes in. Warm, damp, smelling of dampness, and something still alive. There is a staircase in front of her. Narrow, steep, leading down into complete darkness. There is no sound or light below. Only darkness and smell. Aisha stands in the doorway. Her heart is pounding in her throat. She knows she should call Minho, that she can't go in alone, that it's dangerous, but the legs themselves take a step forward. The giant suddenly rushes in front of her, blocking her path. He turns and looks at her. There's fear in his eyes. Real animal fear. He hisses, loudly, angrily, threateningly. He won't let her down. Aisha looks at the python, then at the darkness behind it. "Do you know what's there?" she whispers. "Do you know who's there?" The giant is silent, but he doesn't move. He's ready to protect her, even if it means fighting. Aisha steps back, closes the door, puts the wallpaper back on as best she can. She's not ready, not yet. That evening, they're sitting in the living room. Minho is reading some papers, and Aisha is knitting. She learned to do it long ago to calm her nerves. The giant lies at her feet, but today he's especially restless. He constantly raises his head, listening, and glances toward the kitchen. "He's been nervous lately," Minho remarks, looking up from his papers. "He feels the same way I do," Aisha replies. "That there's someone in the house." Minho is silent. He doesn't argue with her anymore. There's too much evidence. And suddenly, they hear, from the basement, from the very door that Minho forbade to open, steps. Heavy, slow. Someone is walking up the stairs. Step. Pause. Step. Pause. Step. Aisha looks at Minho. Minho looks at Aisha. The giant jumps up and runs into the hallway. They follow him. The basement door is closed, as always, but a light shines through. Weak, yellowish, flickering. The footsteps are getting closer. Now they are almost at the door. Minho grabs the poker from the fireplace and stands in front of the door. Aisha hides behind him, but peeks out. The door handle turns slowly. The door opens. From there, out of the darkness, a light rises. Not a flashlight, not a lamp. Just light coming from somewhere below. And in this light, Aisha sees 2 dots. 2 lights. Eyes. They look straight at her. Minho steps forward, shielding Aisha. He picks up the poker. "Who's there?" he shouts, his voice breaking. There is no answer. Only the light flickers and eyes stare. Minho begins to descend, slowly, carefully, holding the poker in front of him. Aisha tries to stop him, but doesn't have time. He disappears into the darkness, the light of his small flashlight dancing on the walls. Aisha stands at the top, pressed against the wall, counting the seconds. 10, 20, 30. Silence. Then a scream. Minho's scream of horror. And then silence. Long, endless silence. The giant suddenly lifts his head to the ceiling and makes a sound. Aisha had never heard anything like it. It's a howl. Prolonged, mournful, terrifying. The snake howls. Aisha understands that she can't wait any longer. Minho left behind and runs down the stairs. The stairs go deep. Aisha runs, heedless, stumbling over the steps. The air grows warmer, damper, heavier. It smells of earth, dampness, and snakes. It's dark below. The flashlight picks out fragments. Concrete walls, old pipes, piles of some kind of rags. And suddenly, the light falls on the figure. Minho is sitting on the floor, his back against the wall. He's alive. His eyes are open, but he's not looking at Aisha. He's staring ahead, into the darkness, and his expression is strange. Not fear, not horror, amazement. Aisha brings the flashlight closer and sees what he is looking at. In the corner, on a pile of old blankets, sits a woman. She has long gray hair, tangled, falling over her shoulders and back. She is very thin, almost translucent. Her skin is pale, like someone who hasn't seen the sun for years. Odette is wearing some old dress that was once beautiful, but her eyes are alive, dark, deep, exactly like Minho's. And she smiles. "Hello?" she says quietly. Her voice is hoarse, unaccustomed to speech. "I've been waiting." Minho doesn't move. He just sits and looks at her. "Mom?" he whispers finally. "Is it really you?" The woman nods, slowly, cautiously, as if afraid that movement will frighten reality. "I'm here, son. I've always been here." Around her, in the darkness, Aisha notices movement. Numerous bodies slither across the floor, the walls, the ceiling. Snakes, large and small, light and dark. They coil around the woman, crawl up her legs, and lie on her knees. She lives with them, all these years. The woman with gray hair looks at Aisha. There's interest, surprise, something else in her eyes. "You're the one," she says. "The red hair. The giant chose you." Aisha doesn't understand what she's talking about. "I watched," the woman continues, "through the walls, through the ventilation. I saw how he came to you, how he lay down by your door, how he stopped moving. He waited for you his whole life. He knew you would come." "You lived here?" Aisha asks, still not believing her eyes. 10 years? In the basement? "I couldn't go out." The woman shakes her head. "There's peace up there, people, noise. I was afraid. But here it's quiet. My children are here." She strokes the snake lying on her shoulder. The snake closes its eyes in pleasure. "I went down to feed them," she continues. "But that day I just didn't come up. I thought, why? Everything there is foreign. And here it's mine." Minho suddenly stands up. He walks over to his mother and kneels down in front of her. "I was looking for you," he says, his voice shaking. "I searched the whole house. I thought you were gone. Or worse." "I know, son, I saw. I was always watching you. Through the cracks, through the vents. I saw you grow, how you became a man. Why didn't you come out?" "I couldn't. I was afraid. I thought you wouldn't accept me like this. With them." She gestures at the snakes. "I became part of their world, and they became part of me." Aisha helps the woman up. She's as light as a feather. 10 years in the basement haven't been wasted. They climb the stairs slowly. The woman squints in the light, even the dim glow of the flashlight. Snakes slither behind them. Lots of snakes. They fill the stairs, flowing upward like a living river. The giant waits above. When he sees the woman, he freezes for a second. Then he crawls up and lays his head on her legs. "Hello, my big one," the woman whispers, stroking him. "You've grown up. How handsome you've become." They walk out into the hallway. The woman stops, looking at the light from the windows. It's already night, but the moon shines brightly, bathing the hallway in silver. Aisha leads her into the living room and sits her down on the sofa. Minho stands nearby, unsure what to do. The snakes are spreading across the room, occupying corners, climbing onto armchairs, onto shelves. They're everywhere. The woman looks at Aisha, then at her red hair, which is caught in the moonlight. "You're beautiful," she says. "I knew someone with fire in their hair would come." The giant sensed it. He waited. Aisha sits down next to her. The giant crawls over and lies down at her feet. Then he lifts his head and places it on Aisha's lap. For the first time in many days, he is calm. His eyes close, his breathing becomes even. He's home. They're all home. The gray-haired woman smiles at Minho and extends her hand. He takes it and sits down next to her. "Forgive me, son," she whispers. "You're alive," he replies. "That's the main thing." Aisha looks at them, at the snakes around her, at the moonlight in the window. In her pocket are 5 scales, a memento of how this story began. She strokes the giant's head and smiles. There are no more secrets in this house. There is a family here now. The morning in the house begins unusually. Aisha wakes to the sun shining directly on her face. She can't remember the last time she slept this long. The giant is nearby, his head resting on the pillow next to her face. He's no longer tense, no longer trembling. He simply lies there, looking at her with calm eyes. "Good morning," Aisha whispers. She gets up, washes herself, gets dressed. She goes out into the hallway and freezes. Snakes are everywhere. They lie on the floor, curled up. They hang from the stair railing. One small snake is warming itself on the windowsill in the hallway. Another, larger one, takes up an entire armchair in the corner. Aisha carefully steps over them and goes down to the first floor. The light is already on in the kitchen. Aisha walks in and sees a sight that takes her breath away. Minho is sitting at the table. His mother is sitting on a chair next to him. She's washed, her hair combed and braided into a long gray braid. She's wearing clean clothes. Aisha recognizes her spare t-shirt and sweatpants. A woman eats, slowly, carefully, as if relearning the process. In front of her is a plate of porridge, tea, and toast. "Good morning," says Aisha. The woman looks up. There are tears in her eyes. "I forgot how good it is," she whispers. "Real food. For 10 years, I ate whatever I could find in the basement. Canned goods, crackers, sometimes raw vegetables." Minho squeezes her hand. "You will never go down there again," he says firmly. The woman nods, but then she looks at the snakes that crawled out after them and are now lying at the kitchen threshold. "And they?" she asks. "They can't live upstairs. They need the basement. That's their home." "We'll think of something," Aisha replies. She sits down at the table and pours herself some tea. "We can make the basement proper, warm, dry, with lighting, so you can go down there whenever you want. But you'll live here." The woman looks at Aisha for a long moment. "Aren't you afraid of them?" she asks. "No," Aisha smiles. "I'm already used to it." To prove her point, she reaches out to a small snake that has crawled onto the table. It wraps itself around her wrist and freezes, basking. The woman smiles for the first time for real. "You're special," she says. "Ah, I knew it the moment I saw you with the giant." After breakfast, they sit in the living room. The sun floods the room with light. The snakes have slithered into the corners, basking on warm spots on the floor. The giant lies at Aisha's feet, his head resting on her slippers. The woman, her name is Hana, as Aisha learns, tells, "I didn't plan to stay there so long," she says quietly. "That day, I went down to feed the babies. There were 5 of them, very small. I brought them food and sat with them, as always. And then I thought, why go up?" She falls silent, collecting her thoughts. There were so many problems up there. People, noise, responsibilities. And here it's quiet. It's just me and them. I dozed off. And when I woke up, I realized I didn't want to leave. I decided I'll stay for a day, then another, then a week. "But how did you survive?" Minho asks. "Food? Water? There's an old water tap in the basement. I'd get food upstairs at night, when everyone was asleep. I knew every nook and cranny of the house. I could sneak into the kitchen, grab groceries, and leave unnoticed." "It was you who took the food," Aisha realizes. "All these months." "Yes. I saw you come. I was watching you. You were so caring about the giant. I knew right away that you were a good person." "And at night?" Aisha asks. "Did you come into my room?" Hana lowers her eyes. "I wanted to get to know you, to get a closer look. I took your things so I could remember your scent. Sorry if I scared you." "I was scared," Aisha admits. "But now I understand." Minho is silent for a long time. Then he stands up, walks over to his mother, and hugs her. Tightly, like when he was a child. "I missed you so much," he whispers. "Every day. I was there, son. Always." A week passes. Hana is gradually getting used to life upstairs. She eats normal food, sleeps on a normal bed, and showers. Every day, she spends time with the snakes, going down to the basement that Minho and Aisha have started to furnish. Now it's warm and dry, and the lamps are lit. The snakes are happy. But most importantly, Hana learns to live with people, with Minho, with Aisha. They dine together every night. Hana tells stories about snakes and how she raised them. Minho talks about his work, what he's been doing all these years. Aisha listens and smiles. The giant now divides his attention between the three, but most often he lies in the middle so as to be close to them all at once. One evening, they're sitting in the living room. It's dark outside. A fire is burning in the fireplace. The snakes have slithered around the room, warming themselves. Hana is knitting. Aisha taught her. Minho is reading a book. Aisha looks at them and feels a warmth in her chest. "What are you thinking about?" Minho asks, looking up from his book. "That it's strange," Aisha replies. "A month ago, I was alone in a strange city, and now I have a family, and snakes, lots of snakes." Minho smiles, a rare smile appearing on his face. "You saved us," he says. "All of us." Aisha shrugs. "That's your strength," says Hana, without looking up from her knitting. Not to be afraid, to accept, to love. The giant crawls up to Aisha and lays his head on her lap. She strokes his smooth scales. "I really fell in love," she whispers. "Everyone." Another month passes. The house is changing. It no longer feels cold and empty. There are pillows and blankets everywhere, and flowers on the windowsills. Photos have appeared on the walls. Minho as a child, Hana with baby snakes, Aisha with the giant. Snakes have taken over the entire space. They crawl around the rooms, warm themselves on the radiators, and sleep on the sofas. No one chases them away. This is their home, too. Today is a special evening, full moon. Hana says snakes are especially active during the full moon. And indeed, they all came out, even the smallest ones, and settled into their coils in the living room. Aisha sits on the floor, surrounded by snakes. The giant lies behind her, supporting her like a living chair. A small snake is coiled around her wrist. Another is warming itself on her shoulder. Minho sits next to him on the couch. Hana sits in the chair opposite. They drink tea and remain silent. The silence is cozy, warm, and homely. "You know," Hana says suddenly, "I didn't just stay in the basement for nothing. I waited." "What?" Aisha asks. "The one who will come and change everything. The one who will unite us all." The giant knew. He waited longer than anyone. Aisha looks at the python. It opens its eyes and looks back at her. "Were you waiting for me?" she whispers. The giant blinks slowly. Or is she imagining it? Moonlight falls through the window, filling the room with silver. Aisha's red hair glows in the light like a flame. "Beautiful," Minho says quietly. Aisha looks up at him. There's something new in his gaze. Warm. Real. "Are you staying?" he asks. "I'm already staying." Aisha smiles. The giant sighs contentedly and closes his eyes. The little snake on Aisha's shoulder curls up and falls asleep. Hana smiles, looking at them. This house, once cold and empty, is now warm and bustling. Love lives here. Family lives here. A woman with red hair lives here, who braved the house with a huge python and stayed forever. The moon shines through the window. The snakes are sleeping. The people are happy.